I'm Carl, your friendly cyberbroker leftover, and one of the co-hosts for tonight.
I'm Merc, your co-host for tonight, DJ and fellow DJ.
I'm Josie, founder and CEO of CyberBrokers.
And then I am Chris, also known as Mebnock, and I am the creative director at CyberBrokers.
Awesome. Welcome to the second in a series of lore listening parties. So exciting to get to the second after the first one. This is an opportunity for those that are new to learn more about the lore or storyline. That is the foundation of CyberBrokers. For the rest, it's an opportunity to catch up or re-enjoy the richness of the lore in the chapters. For each event, we're going to have special guests who provide commentary, background, their own personal experiences on the chapters we're covering. After the chapters are done, we'll switch into community mode. We'll bring up members of the audience who would like to ask questions or share their own personal thoughts about the lore. This time, if people don't want to step up, feel free to go into the CB lore channel in Discord. As you're listening, type questions there. I'll be monitoring there and ask any questions you post there. At the very end, there'll be quick announcements and then instructions on how to get entered into the giveaway. You can find past recordings of these on Twitter for a couple weeks and permanently now on the new CyberBrokers YouTube channel, which I'm also very excited about. So tonight, we're going to go back to Chapter 2, which was released in January of this year. Chapter 2 was also the introduction of the first puzzle that required community collaboration to solve. I think it was a glimpse of, looking back, what was to come and the catalyst of the community we have today. So it's been 3 months since Chapter 1 in real time. There's a little over a month until the mint starts. Things must have been real busy behind the scenes. How long did it take to write Chapter 2, and any interesting comments about that before we cue it up tonight? Chris?
It actually doesn't take that long. Let me back that up. It takes a while from a sort of a percolation perspective, right? Like when I'm kind of like thinking and putting all this stuff together, but that is sort of a passive thing. The actual like hands-on keyboards part of it takes, for chapters 1 through 4, those are the ones I wrote. They probably took about 6 hours a piece to write and edit to where I liked them. Once I was in the right headspace, right? But a lot of the effort came into pulling together like the themes I wanted to talk about, the core skeleton of it. That's where like most of the calendar time came from. And then I had to find some actual like writing time to put all those words into motion, right?
Yeah, and we were also simultaneously, obviously, building CyberBrokers, getting ready for launch. So there were so many moving pieces that we needed to space out the chapters a bit to make up for some of the time that we needed to cover, if that makes sense. What was the exact month that the second was published? Refresh my memory, Carl.
January 2022.
Okay. That also, I will take ownership for part of that delay because I had a baby in December. So there was a bit of delay from my personal end getting feedback for some of those items, which was an exciting addition, but that definitely was through an extra interesting bit into the mix.
Yeah, I don't think we noticed the delay. It's just looking back, it's interesting to see kind of where things fit. Because it seemed to work out great. It was 1 month before lore or before mint. So it set up perfectly to, keep the story going. We didn't notice it. Maybe you guys noticed it.
Well, we were trying to space things out, right? Because we wanted to build a cadence, but we didn't want to smash it together or have it too far apart. And if I remember right, we were debating, like, should we have chapter 2 be before the mint? And eventually we were like, well, because, things happen, and it just took a little longer than we thought.
Which in hindsight, I'm really glad that everything happened the way it did, because it gave us a moment to build up the world for you guys to be able to experience a bit of it before the mint and understand where we were headed. So happy with the way it worked out.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it definitely worked out like pleasantly for all of us. Yeah.
Well, and I think for those that weren't behind the scenes, the rest of us, seeing the mint and the mint coming live 2 blocks later, and then being able to tie those things into that lore, because chapter 1 didn't really give too much of the TPL. Chapter 2 that we're going to hear tonight was much more TPL oriented and included some characters and tests, and so it helped as we were seeing our characters come to life in the mint. Okay, I think we're ready to hop into chapter 2. Anything else you guys wanted to add before we do that? Okay. Mark,
nope. Let's go.
CyberBrokers, how a paradigm shift became paradigm lost. Project Paradigm, Chapter 2. Unironic Ken flopped into the co-pilot seat. So, where to first? Let's hit the Dow votes. They're probably the most urgent. I don't know. This one looks like a routine alpha command declaring support for some state-backed AI initiative. The other is the Night Dance Academy wanting to greenlight a collaboration. The dance collaboration could be fun. Who's it with? Ken squinted at his braces screen. It looks like hot dogs of some sort. Oh. Ken shrugged. Maybe we can go watch some Cool Cats battle the Pinks instead. Deal. Let's do it. Spice winked, popped open a panel, and glanced to Ken. You got an extra fast travel code for this month? He rolled his eyes and nodded to the view screen. You can afford storage and upkeep on this metal monster, but can't afford a fast travel subscription. Spice slapped her hand on the console board. The only way I can afford this baby is by not spending all my crypto on a fast travel sub. Have you seen how much they cost lately? Sighing, Ken muttered. Fine. His seat creaked as he leaned over to punch in his fast code. Hey, no peeking. The familiar knocking sound of a new notification arrived, stopping him before he finished. He glanced down at his wrist bracer again. Uh-oh. What is it? It's a message from Altair. He wants to meet with us. Altair? As in politician Altair? Meeting Spice's eyes. Yeah. Well then, she said. Politicians were members of the Founders, the oldest and most influential group of cyberbrokers. And even considering the rest of Founders, they were arguably the most powerful. Back when the US government began experimenting with early concepts for TPL rigs, they started by wiring the headgear directly into the brain of a group of chimpanzees. These early rigs were already deemed unsafe for humans, but it was only afterward that a team of biologists discovered the chimps' harnesses had destroyed the neurotransmitters associated with empathy. The chimps, which had somehow survived, came to be known as politicians, the most ruthless and cunning denizens in all the metaverse. If they rang your number, you were expected to take the call. And he wants us to meet him at some backwater parcel. Ken's brows drew tight. Damn it. It's going to cost 4 fast codes to get there in time. Hey, it's okay. I was only kidding. I'll buy the codes. No, it's fine, he said. You just have to pick up the tab for the fast travel when we hit the hot dog recital. Spice grinned. Absolutely. Ken punched in the fast code. Her dash lights flashed to green, and she hit the portal jump. The giant mech transitioned space, bridging across to a separate, isolated node. The hulking mech no longer loomed over a busy urban street, but now appeared in the middle of a bleak desert. Its 2 passengers left staring through their view screen at a welcome sign for the deserted town. A town seemingly plucked straight from the historical Old West. The sign read, Tombstone, Heart of the Wild West. Spice and Ken shared a look. Really? I guess. Spice gestured to the sign. They could have at least changed the name of the default template, maybe call it Demons and Donkeys or something. Anything, really. Ken held out his arm, gliding it across the landscape, like one of those gorgeous models drawing your attention to a luxurious piece of technology. Welcome to the ninth circle of hee-haw! Fucking speculators. Ken shrugged, and Spice cast about for the saloon, because, of course, that's where their meeting would be. She stationed her mech behind the building, near the small barn meant for visitors' horses. She figured her Lupus Model L07 was about as close to a horse as was going to visit today. She and Ken each grabbed their firmware keys, headed down to the ground, mounted the wooden steps, and pushed through the swinging doors. The saloon was silent. The long, slick bar top littered with dirty glasses, an empty poker table, scattered stools and chairs, a ragged staircase leading upstairs to the overnight rooms. It was an empty space, waiting for people to come play. There was no sign of politician Altair. Walking up to the bar, Spice turned and leaned back on her elbows. This DAO vote we're doing later, what was it about? AI? The poker stool screeched as unironic Ken pulled it out and plopped it down at the table. Yeah, I guess they're trying to install more AI to run everything, instead of us. I'm not sure, though. Spice nodded. Doing less work sounds pretty good. It's not. Both she and Ken whipped round in time to see a tall, lean chimpanzee in a tightly tailored suit stride through the doorway, each door held open for him by a henchman. And, Spice realized, one of those henchmen was cute. Not tall, not short, fashionably dressed in hard urban gear and layered silk. She even liked his liberal use of coral pink. Hopefully, he wasn't an asshole. Ken nodded to the ape. Founder? Hello, Ken. Altair's lips pulled back, showing enormous, stark teeth. It's been too long. Ken touched Spice's elbow. This is Mech Pilot Spice. She's the DAO delegate for Alpha Command 10. It's a pleasure meeting you, Mech Pilot Spice. Altair reached out and shook her hand. Please, call me Spice. Of course. I am Founder Altair, but it would make me most happy if you just called me Altair. Again, that broad smile. One of my wealthy friends owns this parcel, so it should be private enough for our needs. Spice and Ken shared a glance, and she mouthed the word, speculator. Altair continued, unaware. As such, I assume that was your Lupus towering over the corral? Snapping back to his words. Yes, sir. Her name is Judgment. She's a sturdy girl. Fitting. I like it. The chimp straightened and met both of their eyes in turn. Cute boy and the other henchman, who had a face like an ironing board, flowed over to flank the politician. I appreciate your time, so I will try to be brief. Spice and Ken nodded. Brief was good. They had some dancing hot dogs to check out, and this was already beginning to smell like work. He flashed another smile. The other founders and I would like to count on the 10's support in defeating this AI DAO proposal. They waited, quiet, expectant, alert. The smile slid from his face, and Altair went on. Obviously, the government considers this an efficiency play. AI can work at 3 times the efficiency of a broker and 10 times that of a drifter. Spice and Ken nodded. She'd heard that. There was an idea that AI could take over all the power generation, synchronize and optimally populate the grid. It didn't matter much to her back home, at least not until an AI could brush off snow and grease sprockets. However, as we all know, AI tend to be heavy-handed and unreasonable. The last thing we want is for them to let the entire human race freeze to death just to build a better paperclip. Not to mention that for most of us, a catastrophic loss of power means wearing a coat indoors for a little while. Altair's face clouded for a moment, his mind far away. However, others might not be so lucky. Spice whipped round to face Ken. Ken's eyes, blown wide, told her he'd realized the same thing. But our bodies, the CyberBroker stuttered. If there's a catastrophic power failure, what happens to us? It's not just power failure, Ken. I'm sure every precaution will be taken for that eventuality. It affects everyone. But personally, I'd much rather have a bunch of humans in charge of whether or not it's efficient enough to run my cryo chamber. Altair nodded to a worried Ken. Yes, I would definitely prefer real people deciding whether my existence in this world is more valuable than some incremental efficiency boost in productivity for a mountain tribe if they could just have their lights on a little longer.
So, again, so much to process. Fast codes, Dow votes, bracers, hot dogs, politicians, and founder Altair, associates, Tombstone. I'm curious, Chris, how did you end up starting in the center of the TPL and then chapter 2 ends up in this kind of empty space?
Yeah, so that was I felt like we kind of described what the center looks like, and in a very lights and noise kind of way, right? And so I thought it would be cool if we sort of showed how they traveled, and we went to like a far corner so that we could kind of like cover like the length and breadth of it, right? Because what we really want to do with all of this is kind of explore the various corners of TPL, so that in the lore we can cover as many different places. There's much stuff, so that we can set this sort of smorgasbord table of locations and sort of the way people travel, all of the like little bits and details, so we can flesh that out so that people like CyberBrokers owners can build their own stories, right? Because that's really what our goal is for everyone to kind of feel like they belong here and they can create their own stories. And we wanted to sort of explore that so that folks felt comfortable, just writing these random, like I tried to think of a very random place that I would that would juxtapose against the deep crazy city, and this town of Tombstone ended up being it, right? Because I was throwing back to when I worked at Decentraland on those guys, and a thing we had there was that folks would buy land, like speculators would buy land for flipping it, right? Because they assumed it would be valuable later or whatever, and they never really built anything on it. And so we always talked about this idea of a template, right? So that there could at least be something there. And so when I was writing this, I was kind of like mixing in some of my MMO experience and then some of the blockchain Decentraland experience and some of the narrative stuff. And I'm just like, poof, here comes this town of Tombstone that is just a default template. Yeah.
And how did you guys end up on politician and apes for the talent to represent kind of the people in charge, or supposedly in charge?
Oh, sorry, what'd you say?
I said, or supposedly in charge.
So we took the talent. Politicians were always going to be apes. From earlier artwork that I have done, like my Fed Monkey series, where all of the, like, basically the representation of the government was always a monkey. So we have like monkeys printing money. I have one that I made. I should link some of these, but I have one that I made on async art, which has the politician monkey with a paint, writing in that they're printing trillions instead of billions. Like it's a reoccurring theme that I've put in a lot of my previous artwork. So it was something that I definitely wanted to bring that sort of like crypto art element into this collection with.
As I'm listening to this, I'm thinking there's a bunch of questions I want to ask about the future, but I can't. because we're only on chapter 2.
I know, right? Right.
So the one I'll kind of comment on, and then maybe we can play it up again. But it's hard to get that Ken and Spice and Zinc all met in chapter 2.
Yep.
And that was clearly on purpose.
Yeah. From the beginning, I kind of wanted to tackle this concept of, like we talked last time, we built a lot of empathy for the CyberBrokers because they're stuck in TPL 24/7, right? And so I wanted to kind of build up this relationship story where we explored what that meant, right? Because Spice is a drifter, and so she can only be there 8 hours a day. And so there are 16 hours a day where, Zinc / Ken / all the other CyberBrokers are wandering around, and she's not logged in. And so exploring the concept of course you can't like date like a CyberBroker because they're in a totally different plane. They exist in this different world. They do different things. Like just kind of running through all of that was my goal. And in order, all good love stories have a triangle, right? And so I had to kind of introduce the second the second of her suitors, right? At some point. And so this part here, him working for Altair seemed like an opportune moment, right? As a cleanup crew guy. So he's out there ostensibly to, not so much bodyguard, but to just like prevent like dirty stuff from getting on Altair's suit or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of fun play that you can infer from that.
Did we lose you there?
Oh no, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I was done. I mean, I can keep talking if you want. But
one last question.
Yep.
What's up with the hot dogs?
Oh my God! Right. So I would love to say that there's an amazing story behind them, but again, kind of like last chapter where the building blast off into space, I was just sitting there. I'm like, okay, what is the most ridiculous thing that I can think of that would have a DAO vote attached to it? And it was literally a hot dog recital. And so I marked off a bunch of random stuff. Like I just dug for deep random is what that was.
It worked.
Right?
Totally.
Oh my gosh. And I love that it's mentioned a couple times. Like, oh my God. Like, because the contrast with what they're doing now, and they're like, oh, please, Lord, let him stop talking so I can get back to my hot dog recital. I mean, that's a thing. That's totally a thing.
Cool. Anything else before we move on?
I feel like there is. Oh, this is probably an important piece to mention. This is where we introduce sort of the I don't want to say the bad guy, right? But the antagonist, quote unquote, of the world in the introduction of AI, right? Because there's this whole AI versus humans thing, and I wanted to kind of like lean into that because we needed a bad guy in a large overall sense, and having it initially, I'm going to say, be AI, it seemed like something that was sort of a good on ramp for this first season. And so we set that up as the AI being the antagonist, right? Because the old there's in the world of machine learning and AIML and all that stuff. There's a thing where AI is going to destroy all the humans because we're going to tell it that, hey, build a better paperclip, and it's going to keep optimizing for a 0.00001% gain over and over again until it figures out that, it can actually do that much better if it destroys all life on Earth, or, like turns Earth into a giant molten, rock so that it can build paper clips easier, more efficiently. Like, so the thing is that the AI is going to end the world because we're going to be optimized out of existence. Like, so that is kind of the crux of this conflict between the cyberbrokers and AI, because the cyberbrokers, in theory, are not could be seen as not contributing enough versus the power, like the limited electricity and power it takes to run everything, all of that kind of stuff. But this is where I wanted to kind of lay the foundations for that.
Got it. We'll keep that point for later, because we're going to have to come back in a later chapter and have a little discussion about all those statements.
Yep. And foreshadowing all of that is exactly what all this is for, right? Building this up as AI being the bad guys.
Okay, Josie, I expected a pen of sheeple somewhere in this scene. Why didn't we have a pen of sheeple? Okay, I think we're ready to go. Merc?
The lights in the saloon had all winked out simultaneously, and a long, loud, rending sound tore through the street outside, followed by a series of explosions. What the hell? Spice tapped on her bracer, started the boot-up sequence for Judgment, and brought up the metadata for the parcel. The screen flashed a PvP zone warning. "Get behind the bar," she bellowed, shoving Ken in the same direction the two henchmen were dragging Politician Altair. "They must have been monitoring the parcel for logins," yelled Ken as he dove behind the bar. "Probably flicked the switch when we arrived." The mercantile shop across the dirt street exploded. The blowback carried through the saloon doors, slamming them wide. Chairs toppled and cards scattered to the floor. It had to be something, because it sure as hell wasn't a PvP zone when we portaled. Spice barreled for the still swinging doors, loading up her .30 caliber barrage rifle as she ran. "Stay put. I'll be right back." The last thing she heard as her boots hit the wood planking outside was Cute Boy asking Ken if she'd be okay. Ah, he wasn't an asshole. She raced around to the back of the saloon, bringing her rifle up to her shoulder. 4 quick shots rocked the sentry they'd placed on Judgment, and he dematerialized. She hadn't even seen his face. Shooting fast now, and solely on instinct. 5 seconds later, she was inside, mounting her pilot chair to the sound of explosions nearby. Her hands hit the control stick, and the Lupus leaped into action, servos whining at the hot start, and the mech dodged left. The corral erupted in fire, the concussion buffeting her around the inside of the mech. Spinning, she engaged Judgment's forearm cannons and strafed the oncoming figure in the alley, ripping their heavy power suit to shreds as they struggled to load a second rocket. That fool also instantly demezed. Whoever these people were, they were shit in real combat. Short-range comms lit up, and she heard a male voice.
"Buck, Juggernaut, you guys there?"
No response. So there were only 3 of them. Spice fired the jump boosters and shot 80 meters into the air. She scanned the small town, eyes following the trail of destruction, and homed in on another figure in a power suit. It must have been the voice she'd heard over comms. She angled Judgment into a controlled fall and landed on top of him. She'd meant to crush his entire torso, but his suit was fast. Instead, she trapped his right arm under the enormous robot boot, crushing it. Her comms lit up again, pegging to red as he shrieked in pain. "You might want to turn off PvP, kid." She was sure he was one of those teenage jerks out for a destruction-filled joyride. These damn adolescents. His screaming came under control, then quit altogether. He must have flipped the zone back to safe.
"There. It's off."
He huffed.
"Why are you still standing on me? What's happening? PvP's off."
Usually, once PvP was shut off, all combatants were healed and immediately separated. However, that didn't apply to Alpha Command members. She couldn't dematerialize anyone in a safe zone, but she had the contract-granted ability to detain suspects as she saw fit. Being detained by a giant robot while it was standing on your arm sucked, but it was better than being logged out and having your daily driver wallet burned along with everything in it. Detention sucked, but starting over because you've been dematerialized really sucked. "Want to explain what you're doing out here, kid?" she asked.
"What should I? Who the hell are you?"
Mech pilot Spice Alpha Command 10.
Shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
If I tell you, will you let me go?
Probably not. The kid groaned. His power suit was depleted of energy, and she was losing patience. On the count of 3, I'm going to crush your suit with you in it. It didn't actually work like that, but this didn't seem to know the difference.
Wait!
He cried.
We fished this whale today. He gave us the keys. We thought it would be fun to shoot the place up. We didn't know you were going to be here, honest.
She sighed. Give me the keys. He beamed her the keys, and she loaded them to a detachable drive port in the cockpit. Now, erase them from your systems. Tell me when you're done, and I'll scan to make sure you were successful. She couldn't actually do that either, but again, this kid didn't know that. A moment later.
Okay, I'm done. They're gone, I promise.
Spice leaned back in the chair, rubbed her eyes and took a long breath. She needed to get back and check on Ken. Getting dematerialized as a cyberbroker wasn't quite as bad, but it was still inconvenient. They tended to work in groups with multi-sigs, so their keys couldn't be burned unless all of the SIGs simultaneously demeshed together. Good, she said, after what seemed like a reasonable amount of time. I've now marked your ENS. I don't want to see you out here again. Goodbye. She hooked a giant steel boot under his suit, flipped him into the air, cartwheeled around a completely unnecessary rocket-powered roundhouse kick, and connected, blasting him out on a trajectory to land several kilometers away. PvP wasn't enabled anymore, so it wouldn't hurt him at all, but he'd hopefully have a miserable walk all the way back to town before he could portal out. She was idling in the mech, giggling about his walk when her comms flared yet again. She spun around and aimed the massive head at the ground where 4 tiny figures had arranged themselves in a semicircle out on the dusty street. Oh, hi guys. Big mech hand. What else to do?
May we finish our business and be out of here, mech pilot?
Asked Altair. Oh, yes, she stammered, leaping out of her seat, through the cockpit door and down to the ground. Spice jogged up to the group, and Cutie said, Nice shooting, Tex. What? She stared at him. What? Unironic Ken glared at him. I figured I needed to say something after that badass roundhouse, and it was either that or ride him, cowboy. Spice cocked her head and pursed her lips. Cutie henchman blushed. I mean, it might as well be something cringe in honor of this default Cowtown template, right? She smiled and nodded slowly. He did the same. And again, in unison, they both mumbled, Fucking speculators. Whoa! Ken stepped between them, a hand up in either direction. Can I ask what is even happening right now? Indeed, I would ask the same question, said Altair. Eager to change the subject, Spice pulled the portable drive out of her pocket and tossed it to unironic Ken. He almost dropped it. His frown was so deep. What's this? It's the account keys to this parcel, she turned to Altair. That group of kids fished it from your friend. Ken turned the key over in his hand. Can you get it back to the owner, Ken? And tell him to put it in a Gnosis safe next time? The unlock password is speculator. No need. Zinc here is cleanup crew. He'll handle it. So I'm sure Ken is more than... Zinc began. No, I do not want these keys lost, and I would prefer you did it rather than a leftover. Yes, of course, sir, both Ken and Zinc blurted, while simultaneously lurching towards each other and nearly colliding. Ken, eyes wide, shoved the key at Zinc. Zinc, grimacing, whispered, I'm sorry. Ken, looking like he was in the grips of an enema, whispered back, Please, just take it and go away. Anyway, said Spice, as she pushed through the 2 cyberbrokers, I think I'm convinced this AI proposal should probably... Yes, replied Altair. Yes, it should.
Okay, that ends the podcast portion. If people want to ask questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can bring people up. If you're not comfortable coming up, feel free to post in the CB Lore channel. We'll be taking questions there as well. Josie and Chris, anything you'd like to share before we get into community questions?
No, probably the most important piece here that gets introduced in this part is the PvP zones versus demezzing and all of that. Kind of because we're establishing basic rules as to like consequences from battles and fights and those kind of things. And we draw a direct line to fishing, like fishing whales and stealing their keys. Like there's a lot of crypto stuff here. There's a lot of video game stuff. And we wanted to create the concept of dying without actually dying, right? Because you're in a digital world. And I've always thought it was super cheesy when, like, oh, if you die in the metaverse, your brain tells you die in the real world. Like that's like that's never been my jam. But I did want it to have consequences. And now that we have in crypto this concept of like real digital scarcity, there are consequences, right? Like your wallet is burned is a thing that could be crazy. And so we wanted to protect against that. We've got PvP zones, again, drawing from my MMO dev experience, right? So we've got PvP zones, non-PvP, the crypto getting burned. Like I just mashed a lot of these things together to kind of create this sense of accountability for bad behavior, right?
Yeah, I remember when you wrote this, I actually scrolled back to our old DMs. There's actually some gold in there
oh
for
my
several
gosh.
posts.
Oh my gosh.
That I'm like, okay, I'm like sending links to Brianna. Okay, we need to post this in the future. This is so cool.
Do it.
But yeah, but we have some. I'm reading back to our old messages, and I said exactly what you're talking about. I said to you, the amount. Oh wait, I lost my line right now. Oh yeah, I said, are there any other writings that bring together crypto and metaverse like you've done in this chapter? It's the first time I've read something like this. Like I'm so excited to bring these worlds together. And that was going into CyberBrokers, like obviously everything for me personally that I had learned about the metaverse, and what that meant and what I hope the future of that looks like and what we are hoping to help build. Plus everything with creating crypto art and the ethos behind everything with crypto, like combining those two was something really important in just creating the art of CyberBrokers. So to see Chris be able to take those same really strong core like principles and ideologies and like mash them together into the writing and like pull like really amazing references from both to create the foundation of TPL was so cool for me. And I don't even know if we like, I think through just the creation of CyberBrokers together, like we were just on the same wavelength there. So It was really, really cool to see that come to life in this chapter.
Yeah, that was really a thing, right? Like, and I kind of alluded to it last week, right? Where Josie's like, "Oh, this is great," and she's not giving me. It's because we're on the same page, right? And it's lots of fun. Like building a project with somebody who's on the same page with the same goals is cool. I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, I remember some of my early feedback to Chris, like with reading the chapters, was like, Chris, I do not know what like 8 of these words mean. Like I've had to Google 8 things reading this that were just like vocabulary like I didn't know. So I was learning from him, but I was also like, do we need to take some of these out? You know, because I was like, I don't know if the average person knows it. So those were like some of my early feedback, but really like once I started understanding, I mean, Chris has such like visual writing, which was really cool. To just like envision everything that was going on in his head in such like a short chapter. So it was really cool to see that come to life with this in chapter 1 and then like continuing through the rest. Okay, I'll shut up in case anybody wanted to come to stage for questions too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm not seeing anything in CB lore. There's a little chat going on in holders. I think probably the other thing to talk about here is mechs. So, chapter 1 briefly gave us a glimpse of a mech, but now we've got a moving mech. We've got guns. We've got, flipping and kicking, and it seems to be laying a baseline for something.
It does. Weird, huh? Did I tell you guys about last week? Did we talk about Ben not reading the lore?
No, I don't think we read it.
Oh my gosh, this is such a great story. So we are we're literally building these mech part drops and stuff, and Ben's gonna yell at me for ratting him out. And he comes and he's so confused. He's like, why are we making mechs? I thought this is CyberBrokers. And like this is like in March, right? And we're all just like, what are you talking about? Have you not read the lore? Like, and he's like, no. And so he actually didn't read it until Robin read it so that he could listen to it, and then he's just like, oh my god, okay. But that was the funniest thing.
That was pretty funny. Chris put Ben on punishment, and Chris wouldn't like tell Ben certain things until Ben caught up.
Until read the lore.
Yeah, so we eventually got
yeah, he's in.
Through a little bit of
because Ben worked with me back at Blockade Games on Neon District and stuff, and so like I did writing back there too, and Ben read that, like all of that, and so I am positive in his mind he's just like, oh, of course Chris is writing this cool cyberpunk stuff and it's awesome, so he doesn't need to read it to make sure it's awesome. You know what I mean? There's no like, oh well, let me get in there and see if I need to tweak anything. There's none of that, because it's just like, cool, Chris has this and it's over there. And then Ben was busy writing, I mean, to his credit, he's busy writing like this super innovative smart contract stuff, and he was busy, but you know, there's that too.
Anyone have questions and want to come up, raise your hand. Also CB Lore for questions. The question I'll ask, Wilbur, how did you keep this all secret? Because again, in the background, you know, a lot of this stuff has to be happening to get where it is now. How did you manage to keep all that secret?
We are at the time we were just the three of us, I think, because this is before Brooke got there. So there weren't a lot of loose lips, so to speak, to sink any ships. And kind of like Josie was saying last week, where anytime we talked about any vendors or anything like about lore, I was just like, don't tell them, like, don't ruin anything. And so it was just fanaticism on my part, right? Because I don't want to spoil, because I hate when I get spoiled with stories, and I didn't want to spoil anybody's stories, and so we just worked really hard at that.
Yeah, Chris wouldn't let us tell anyone. Like you said, when we were on the call with, like, for example, I've already mentioned this in a different call, so if you guys don't know, and I actually mentioned it in our recent newsletter, but we're working on an entire site redo and revamp, and it's going to be so sick. But when we first started, these conversations with them, like months and months and months ago, and started working with them, like, Chris didn't even want me to tell them on the phone, even though we were already, you know, the 4 chapters had been out, the first 4. And he said, don't tell them anything. They need to read it, and they need to see everything that happens. And then I was like, Chris, like, we need to, like, you know, keep this quiet. He's like, no. I was like, okay, I'll let them read it. So he was really protective over it. But that was awesome, because they got to experience it and really, like, feel, instead of just being told the one-liner of, like, what's happening, they got to, like, feel that happen throughout the chapters. So that was pretty special. Also, Shaster Eth, are you raising your hand with that emoji, or, because I don't think you are, right?
Awesome. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for having me up real quick. It's not necessarily a lore-related question, but it was something kind of our group of CyberBrokers holders kind of was just curious on. We know how long it took you basically developing the art for the actual CyberBrokers, which we all love. But I was curious, how long, not only on the individual TPL mecha parts, but how long has it taken you on the art for the actual mechas themselves?
For the pieces that you guys have received, or are you talking about something else?
So actually both. So we were actually curious because the mega parts themselves look great, the ones that we've received, but how long has the actual work gone on for you building the actual mechas, in your art form?
Yeah, we have been building art for mechs, and we are still building art for mechs. It's definitely a really great process now that we have a bit more of defined like output of what we want for timing and what we want for the mechs in general, versus CyberBrokers is more of like this like art collectible that's the foundation to this world and this ecosystem. Mechs with their art, with the concept, with everything, definitely has a lot of different things in play than what CyberBrokers had in play, but in a really fun way where we're able to collaborate a bit more with different types of artists, versus just sort of this like collaboration that Azima and I did just by ourselves for the whole CyberBrokers collection. So it's a totally different workflow. It's not going to be taking as long as the CyberBrokers collection because of some of those things that I just mentioned, though.
No, that was great. That was really the only question I had, and thank you for answering that. I appreciate you guys letting me up here.
Of course, I love your CyberBroker. Do you know the name of your CyberBroker by chance, off the top of your head?
Yep, it's a Shallow Corwin.
Cool.
Nice.
I like
the one
it.
that I minted.
I love
That's
it.
awesome.
There's a question from chat. Zoom Van wants to ask, for the lore, is there real world inspiration or the team's view of what the metaverse will be like?
Yeah, actually, I think it is. And it probably bridges from the very beginning, right? With it, like the whole apocalyptic start to all of this, where climate change has affected. Because I was one of those people that watched the what's it called, the Al Gore thing, Inconvenient Truth, right? And the ice shelves break off and they stop the North Atlantic current, and that causes this ice age. And I was like, whoa, that is such a crazy thing to affect. Like, heat actually causes an ice age. I was into the dichotomy of it, the whole thing. And yeah, it's A, terrifying, right? But B, that's a cool apocalyptic thing to write about. And so even from that very start, like, and then going through it, like I talk a lot about how crypto and MMOs and video games and all those things influence me, right? Well, those are societal pieces that are actually real world things right now, right? And as an MMO game designer, like, I do a lot of work specifically around like social community multiplayer interactions in a virtual world, right? Like, I've designed acres of stuff that revolve around that. And so I kind of took those designs basically and kind of like forecasted them into the future and broadened all of that. And a lot of it is sort of the stuff that I think I talked about last week, where we've got these anachronistic tendencies that we fight as a group, as we're writing, because it's not just me writing these things anymore. Like, we've got this whole writer's room and all these people, these like awesome people helping, but we're constantly fighting these anachronistic pieces where we'll talk about, like, oh, so and so was eating dinner. Do you really eat in the verse? I don't know. Why would you eat? Those kinds of, you're plugged in and whatever. But kind of just pulling all that together, pushing it into the future, forecasting where like this terrible society will go, trying to keep things to where they make sense mechanically, and just like kind of sprinkling drama on top, I guess, is where all that goes. Did I answer your question? Does that make sense?
They're in chat, so I'm going to assume yes.
Perfect.
I've got another. Oh yeah, I said amazing. Thank you. My CB is Muse Zesty, a gambler.
Nice. I love our names. Like that was one of my favorite things we did, is name the CyberBrokers individually with all these cool names. I feel like that has given us so much power as a collective whole, right? Talking about them, writing lore about them, enabling stories about them, Twitter accounts, personas, like that whole thing. Like it unlocked that whole layer of interactivity across everything.
I agree.
Because you're not
had any projects done that before, Chris? Do you know, or do any of you guys know?
That's a good question.
Because I've always, all the things that I've collected that are like this sort of like collection style, like CryptoPunks, obviously they're just numbers. Like I wish my CryptoPunks or my, like all these
had a name, right?
Yeah, CryptoKitties could let you
for a few of them, yeah.
Yeah. But like I've never seen a collection with names. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm really happy we did that, because you connect way more with a name, and you can imagine a story. You can imagine where they're from, what their personality is like so many different things from the way, like just as you write in such a visual descriptive way, and the way that you decided to, make the foundation of how we were going to name was also extremely descriptive. I don't think any of our names are boring in any sense.
Yeah.
And if they're boring, they're telling you that the person is a boring person, right? It's really
yeah, they're boring on purpose. Exactly.
To be so descriptive with these and help it expand that, and to have something, even when I asked Shaster.eth, oh, do you know the name of your CyberBroker? He knew that right away.
Boom,
so
dropped it. Yep.
Yeah. It gives something really special to connect with.
I agree.
Vo in chat says hash masks allow you to name and rename your pieces with their
yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yep.
Good.
But that's kind of a different thing. I am so glad they allow you to rename them though. Right? If you allowed, total tangent here, right? Design tangent. If you're building an NFT collection, you allow people to name them and not rename them, then I'm going to be very sad if I get thing that says Buttmaster 45 or whatever, right? I want to be able to name my character cool. So that's totally a thing.
We're naming a mech Buttmaster 45. That's so funny.
Well, I was thinking crypto dick butts in my head, but I didn't want to go there.
I could tell.
Yeah.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because I was going to comment that Spice's mech has a name, CyberBrokers.
Did we alpha leak something?
That's a fun alpha leak.
I don't
get that.
Oh, look, there's Santa Claus over there, guys. There's nothing over here.
So I'll move on then.
There's going to be something fun that's a bit different than last time. So that'll be our alpha leak.
Yep. All right. There's a question in chat, and I'm going to ask it in a different way. And you're more than welcome to say you'll have to wait to find out. Okay. So Spice is in her mech. What would happen if someone blew her arm off? Would she need to get another arm?
That's a good question. So in her mech or in her because those are two different things.
I think this is a mech specific question.
A mech specific question. So as a mech specific question, the mechs are actually really large, right? And she's sitting in a co-pilot seat, or a pilot seat rather. And so she has like a co-pilot, like Ken is sitting next to her in the cockpit. So it's not like her arms are actually there, or it's not what was that movie where they had the giant mechs that fought under the ocean and they had to have two brains in sync to operate them?
Pacific Rim.
Thank you, Pacific Rim. Yeah. So it's not like that where she's connected in some weird, or like Evangelion, or like even Attack on Titan, where they're in those big things and like they're actually pieces of their giant things. So she's in a chair, playing the controls and causing all that stuff, causing all the havoc. Now the power suit is a different thing, right? That's more like what you would traditionally call like regular power armor kind of things. And in that case, if her arm got blown off, that would definitely take her own arm with it.
Okay. Dot the DGen, Team Ken, would like to ask, what did Josie conceive of Ashura being in relation to the lore? And what was her inspiration for Ash? And you know what? Could you pronounce that name for me? Because I've heard it said different ways.
First of all, we don't know about Ashura yet, though, right?
Right. So
Okay.
I'll say the reason why I wanted her in this collection and why she was the one of one, or like Genesis piece, from like just outside of like just like the origin story of her name and everything like that. I say Ashura, but people can say it Ashura or whatever way. I just say Ashura. That's the way it sounds in my head. So initially, when I first heard of Ashura, it was through Snow Crash. And I started doing more research on Ashura and just trying to understand what she represented. And I found out through the research that she's actually shown the name Ashura. She's a goddess in some religions or cultures, and in others she symbolizes something else. But she's listed in a lot of different cultures and religions. She's widely known as in Sumerian mythology as a goddess of life and fertility, which I really loved that root meaning. A lot of the reason with my crypto art and all of my art that I've done in the past, I've always used women in my art. Obviously, probably because I connect a lot with that in my own journey and being a woman myself, but also this idea of like what crypto brought to me, and the ethos that it brought to my life and the understanding that it brought to me. Like it felt like this new creation, this like new life, which I know sounds so cliche, but like it really did change my perspective on a lot of things. And a woman also represents life and bringing life. So I loved that in Sumerian mythology, that's what she was the goddess of life and fertility. More in the Snow Crash novel, I think that it was more of her representation of being symbolized as like this tree or a serpent in some cultures, which is why, from my understanding in that book, the virus is named the Ashura virus because it like wraps itself around the DNA and alters the brain. So there's definitely different meanings, which I think is quite special and quite cool. And the more I dug into the name of Ashura, which I learned from the Book of Snow Crash, I loved all of the different meanings. And I thought that it would be a really special like Genesis piece to give a nod to Snow Crash. It represented in some cultures the meaning of life and fertility, which gave a nod to like the meaning of my early work or all my artwork with women. It just kind of combined all those things for me. So that's what the origin of why I wanted to use that name and that representation.
Did I mention that we have a lot of like intent embedded in CyberBrokers just as a whole? Like there's there's a lot of stuff that we do on purpose.
I was trying to heart and I almost blocked someone. Sorry. I didn't block you though.
I think that's clear because, as an example, we can't talk about a lot of things here that are coming up, but they all started here.
Yeah.
I wanted to give Cal a shout out. He put a comment in and kind of relates to the names. And he said he loved the names because he's not just a name. It adds something, special to it. Zoom Zoom Van had another comment, not related to the lore specifically, but he wanted to say he appreciated that all the brokers seem to have a vast representation of people across the globe without feeling like it's culturally appropriated. Thank you.
Yeah, that was super important to us. Like we had to make some cuts on different assets that like accessories that I thought could be really special but could toy the line if shown like in a generative way on a totally different like massive array of people. So we did have to do some organizing to make sure that we really celebrated all of these different like representations of people and cultures, but in a way that was very respectful. So we had to do some research with that for sure, and research by like talking to our family members and friends that are Indian, like really understanding what is a way to celebrate other cultures respectfully. So we're really happy that you connect with that. I think that in our space, a lot of people are saying that, NFTs and PFPs can be an identifier, this icon that represents your identity online and your persona. And if that's the case, then I think that it's really special and really important to include people that look like everyone around the world, not to just make it, look like a certain person that looks like the creator or looks, like anyone. Like we just wanted to make a mix. So I'm really glad that you guys appreciate that. And even we saw a lot of the people we met in New York at our party. They opened up to me and shared with me that it was the first NFT that they collected that they felt represented who they were and where they were from. So that was really special. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying that.
Yeah.
That brought up an interesting thing that maybe for another time. Wonder if there's stuff that didn't make it that's kind of like in the drawing room floor that you guys might want to share later.
For sure. I definitely think so. There's even some things that were really fun that for some reason didn't make the cut. We can share that with you guys. There are some really fun ones that we'll definitely we'll start to share some of those old combos and boards. There were even some cuts that we made up until the point of when we were mixing everything together and we decided something really didn't feel like it fit with the collection in a great way. So we took it out, but we would love to show you those.
Yeah, one of my favorite cuts was the early versions of the bodies, right? And because if you look at the art, it's built out of shapes of colors, basically, right? Because it's all on chain and SVGs and vector, all that stuff. And it was like the amount of iteration over that to get those shapes to look like a I don't know, like a human, obviously, but to get them to look nice, like it's amazing to watch. And it's at some point, Josie, we should totally publish that and be like, here's where we started and here's where we ended. And you could see the transition. Because that was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard for me to show a lot of like work in progress because I have this moment where I'm like, oh, I really didn't like that version, but I think it is important to show that step in the process. So I love it. We should totally do something with that.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Vo in chat said was mentioning that they appreciate the Asian representation and love to see that an Asian guy, Team Ken, was featured prominently in the lore too.
Yeah,
I know, I love that.
Good Ken. Yep. I hand built Ken because that's how I pictured Ken.
Yeah, no, that's, and I don't know if you guys, I don't know if you guys agree, but some of the faces we intentionally, this was a really tricky best to make, but some of the faces we intentionally tried to make them like ambiguous enough where different hairstyles could change the look of the ethnicity of the person depending on what was put with them, and that it would mesh well with across different ethnicities, which I thought was really, it was a tough task to manage that, but especially with some of the guy faces that I'm thinking of in particular, depending on the hairstyle, could go a few different ways, which was,
but it was really important. It really was important.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, we had lots of discussions on that.
It's funny. I was talking to Ballistic earlier today, and he's like, there's no bald guys, and I'm like, what are you talking about? There's bald guys all over the collection. I
Right?
pulled two up quick, and I was like, he's like, oh my gosh, I never saw those. Even after this many months, there's still things you run across that you're like, oh, I never noticed that before.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Dog Racer wanted to say thank you. He read Snow Crashed because of this project and really enjoyed the book. And thanks for exposing him to that.
Yes, it's a very good book.
It was hard for me to get through at first. I had to listen to it on audio, I have to admit, which helped a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can wrap up. I'm going to do some quick announcements, and then Chris and Josie, you can make any final statements you want, and then that'll be the cut point for YouTube, and I'll go into the drawing.
Awesome.
So a couple quick announcements. The next one of these, we're going to start alternating the times. So we are fair to both our Europe and Asia fan base. So the next one will be more aligned towards Europe. It'll be next Thursday, right around noon, I think. Don't quote me on the time. I need to nail the time down. So that'll be next week. Every Tuesdays, or every Tuesday at 2 and 9 p.m. Eastern, our creator calls in Discord. It's a place where people with ideas for things in Cyber Universe can come, share their idea, find people to work with, or ask any questions about the community fund. I think you all saw that announcement, and the two projects, Lost Paradigms and the AI text to image, that have been funded. So we're looking for more projects to fund. Please come in there and tell us your ideas. Thursdays, 2 and 9 p.m. Eastern, are community spaces. Merc and I hop on and just chat about anything people want to come up and chat about. They're kind of casual spaces, have conversations that vary based upon who shows up. Get those Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 p.m., 9 p.m., depending upon your time zone, on your calendars, because that's where special events like this will pop up. And each week, usually before Monday noon, check Discord events. That will always have the list of things coming up for this particular week. Josie, Chris, anything you want to wrap up with?
I will just say that I thoroughly enjoy these. And I love the way Robin reads them. I love his specific, his accent, but like, I love the way he curls around the language. Like, I think it's lots of fun. I love his dramatization. Like, it feels very Supermassive when he reads it. So I am just like, and giving you guys all the background on, what we were thinking. Like, this is just so much fun. I really enjoy these, and it was such a good idea, Carl. And I love that we're doing them.
Yes, I second Chris as well. It's really fun to get in here with you guys and just chat about the storyline, and also I love how it's tying into just some of the history of building all of this, because even though really it's not that long ago, and crypto, it's like so long ago, So it's nice to revisit this with all of you guys and just reminisce a bit on the early days of working together on this. So thank you guys all for listening in.
And just to be clear, this was not my idea. I'm just the one who's helping make it happen.
Ah, that's right. It was J Tops, right?
Josie, I'm not even sure.
I have no idea. We'll
Nice.
give everyone credit for it.
There you go.
It could have
Go
been
team.
could have been Carl. It could have even been you, and you forgot. I don't know.
That's
But you
true
guys
story.
are Mark and Carl. You guys are amazing hosts. So thank you for DJing and hosting this whole thing down.
Indeed.
And thank you to both of you just for taking the time to share. And the community clearly loves these. You can see by the participation already. And, last week's one is, I think, almost up to 500 listens. So people are definitely loving all of this. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.